I am Janet Carter, 34, and literally last weekend my rep as a naval commander and cybersecurity expert, yeah, it totally backfired. The Legion of Merit I worked my butt off to earn by stopping a catastrophic naval disaster, it blew up into a full-on family meltdown at our so-called happy reunion. My father, Colonel Randall Carter, retired Army, straight up demanded I admit my brother Vance's combat medals outshone mine. When I clapped back, the room went dead silent. "You're no hero, Janet," he yelled, with my mom, aunts and cousins staring like deer in headlights. But here's the tea. His shade didn't break me, it lit a spark. I'm not just pushing back, I'm about to flip the script and change everything. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from, hit subscribe, and stay with me for the most satisfying revenge you'll ever hear. Looking back, it's almost, you wouldn't believe what I'll do once that Pentagon call comes through. It started at my parents' sprawling Virginia estate, the kind of place that screams old military pride, with polished oak and framed photos of Dad and Vance in uniform. I walked in, my dress blues crisp, my Legion of Merit citation folded in my pocket like a secret weapon. I'd spent months decoding a cyber attack that could have sunk half our Pacific fleet. Sleepless nights, encrypted files, my team at Norfolk sweating bullets. We did it. I did it. The Navy pinned that medal on me in a quiet ceremony, and I thought, maybe, just maybe, Dad would finally see me. He didn't. Dinner was barely served, roast beef, mashed potatoes, the usual Carter spread when Dad started. "Vance took fire in Fallujah," he said, his voice booming, eyes on my brother across the table. Vance, 36, all smug in his civilian polo, nodded like he was still dodging bullets. "That's real courage, Janet, not whatever you do with computers." My fork froze midair. Mom, Tammy, fidgeted with her napkin, avoiding my gaze. Aunt Glenda coughed awkwardly. I felt my chest tighten, but I forced a smile. "Cybersecurity saves lives too, Dad," I said, voice steady. He snorted, actually snorted, and waved me off. "It's not the same." I wanted to scream. I'd spent years chasing his approval, every promotion, every late night, every cracked code, thinking it'd make him say, "I'm proud of you, Janet." Instead, he'd frame Vance's bronze star like it was the Mona Lisa, while my master's degree, my deployments, my anything got a pat on the head. I glanced at Vance expecting backup. He just smirked, sipping his beer. Betrayal stung worse than Dad's words. By dessert, I was done. I stood, citation in hand, ready to lay it all out, how I'd saved thousands of sailors, how my work was national security's backbone. But Dad cut me off, his voice ice cold. "Sit down, Janet, don't embarrass yourself." The spark in me flared. I wasn't embarrassed, I was furious, and I was going to make sure they all remembered this night. The dining room was still buzzing with that awkward silence, Dad's words hanging like smoke. I sank back into my chair, the Legion of Merit citation crumpled in my fist under the table. My mind drifted, pulling me back to years of being invisible in this family. Growing up in that same Virginia house, I was always the odd one out. The girl who'd rather hack into Dad's old PC than play soldier with Vance. I'd spend hours in my room, teaching myself code, while Dad and Vance were out in the yard, him barking orders like it was basic training. "Vance is a warrior," Dad would say, framing yet another of his ROTC certificates. Me? I got a, "That's nice, Janet," for winning the state mathlete competition at 15. By high school, I was acing computer science, building firewalls for fun. I'd show Dad my projects, hoping for a nod. Once, I stopped a ransomware attack on the school's servers, got a handshake from the principal. I rushed home beaming and told Dad. He was polishing Vance's football trophy. "Good job, kid," he mumbled, not looking up. "But Vance just made varsity, that's real grit." My stomach sank. I wanted to yell, "I'm your kid too." Instead, I swallowed it, like always. College was worse. I got into Annapolis, full ride cybersecurity track. Dad didn't come to my graduation. Vance had a deployment ceremony the same day. When I made lieutenant, I sent Dad a photo of me in my whites, grinning. He texted back, "Vance got promoted to captain, proud of him." I stared at that text for an hour, tears blurring the screen. Mom, Tammy, tried to smooth it over. "He's just old school, Janet," she'd say, her voice soft like she was apologizing for him. But it didn't fix the ache. The final straw was Vance's bronze star. I was 28, just back from a classified op in Bahrain, where I'd neutralized a cyber threat that could have crippled our drones. I got a Navy Commendation Medal, my first big nod. I flew home for Christmas, medal in my bag, thinking this was it. Dad would have to see me. At dinner, he gave a toast to Vance's heroism under fire. He hung Vance's medal in the hallway, right by the front door. Mine? He glanced at it, said, "Pretty ribbon," and handed it back. Vance smirked, like he'd won some contest I didn't know we were playing. Back at the reunion, I unclenched my fist, the citation now a sweaty mess. Aunt Glenda was droning on about her garden, but I caught Mom's eye. She gave me a small, sad smile, like she knew I was drowning. I wanted to tell her how I'd stopped a disaster, how my team trusted me, how I was more than Vance's little sister. But Dad's voice cut through again, praising Vance's latest consulting gig with some defense contractor. "That's my boy," he said, clapping Vance's shoulder. The room cheered. I felt like I was 15 again, invisible, my achievements just noise to them. I straightened up, my spark flaring hotter. They didn't know what I'd done, what I was capable of, but they would. Soon. I just had to survive this damn dinner and get to that Pentagon ceremony. I smoothed the citation on my lap, my resolve hardening. This wasn't over. My fingers tightened around the crumpled citation under the table, Dad's toast to Vance still echoing in my ears. I let my mind slip back to the moment that changed everything. The secret project that became my Legion of Merit. It started 18 months ago, in a dimly lit ops room at Norfolk. I was leading a cybersecurity team, and we'd picked up chatter about a zero-day exploit targeting our Pacific Fleet's navigation systems. If it went live, every ship from San Diego to Guam could have been dead in the water. Or worse, turned against us. My CO, Captain Floyd Dempsey, pulled me aside, his voice low. "Janet, this is your call. Don't screw it up." I barely slept for weeks. My team, me, Lieutenant Marla Kent, and civilian coder Wayne Pritchard, holed up in a secure bunker, coffee cups piling up, monitors glowing with lines of malicious code. The hackers were ghosts, bouncing through servers in Estonia, then North Korea. Every time we patched one vulnerability, another popped up. Marla's hands shook as she typed. Wayne muttered curses under his breath. I felt the weight of it all. Thousands of sailors, billions in assets, national security. Failure wasn't an option. One night at 3 a.m. I spotted it, a backdoor in the fleet's satellite uplink. My heart raced as I traced it to a single corrupted firmware update. "Got you," I whispered, my fingers flying across the keyboard. But the fix wasn't simple. We had to rewrite the entire protocol without tipping off the hackers. I led the charge, dictating code, double-checking Marla's syntax, calming Wayne when he nearly smashed his monitor. My eyes burned, my back ached, but I kept going. We all did. After 72 hours straight, we deployed the patch. I held my breath as the system rebooted. The screens flashed green, clean. The fleet was safe. Marla collapsed in her chair, laughing. Wayne high-fived me so hard my hand stung. Captain Dempsey burst in, grinning. "You did it, Carter. You saved our asses." A week later, in a quiet ceremony, he pinned the Legion of Merit on my chest. I stood tall, my team behind me, but inside, I was screaming for Dad to see this, to understand what I'd done. I didn't tell him. I wanted to wait for the right moment, maybe this reunion, to show him I was more than Vance's sister. But as I sat there now, watching Dad laugh at Vance's lame joke about Army-Navy football, I realized he'd never care. Not like Floyd or Marla or Wayne did. They'd seen me at my best, trusted me when it counted. That medal wasn't just a ribbon. It was proof I was enough. Back in the dining room, Mom passed me the gravy, her fingers brushing mine like a silent apology. I gave her a nod, but my focus was elsewhere. Tomorrow, I'd be at the Pentagon, where my work was about to be recognized again, bigger than I'd ever dreamed. I smoothed the citation one last time, tucking it into my pocket. Let Dad fawn over Vance. I had a bigger stage waiting, and I wasn't invisible there, not anymore. The spark in me wasn't just burning now, it was a damn wildfire. The reunion dinner dragged on, Dad's voice still droning about Vance's latest heroic consulting deal, while I pushed peas around my plate, my mind already on tomorrow. The Pentagon had called me in for a ceremony, something about a significant honor, but they'd been cagey about details. All I knew was it was big, maybe career-defining, and it was happening in less than 24 hours. My dress blues were pressed, my speech half-written in my head, but sitting here, surrounded by family who couldn't care less, I felt a knot in my stomach. This annual Carter dinner, always at Dad's Virginia estate, was the last place I wanted to be. I glanced at the clock, 8:47 p.m. I'd been counting down the minutes until I could escape to my hotel. The table was a minefield of forced smiles and veiled jabs. Aunt Glenda, tipsy on Merlot, asked me, "So Janet, still playing with computers?" Her tone dripped with pity, like I was some basement hacker, not a naval commander. I forced a laugh, my jaw tight. "Yeah, Glenda, saving the Navy one keystroke at a time." She blinked, confused, and changed the subject. Vance smirked, leaning back in his chair, his arms slung over the back like he owned the room. Mom caught my eye, her fingers twisting her napkin again. "You okay, hon?" she whispered when Dad got up to refill his whiskey. I nodded, but I wasn't. I kept picturing tomorrow, standing in the Pentagon's Hall of Heroes, maybe finally feeling like I'd made it. But the thought of Dad's inevitable dismissal, even of something that huge, gnawed at me. I'd spent years chasing his pride, and now, on the verge of something monumental, I was dreading his reaction more than I wanted to. I excused myself to the bathroom, needing air. In the hallway, I passed the glass case where Dad displayed Vance's medals, Bronze Star, Purple Heart, all polished like relics. My Legion of Merit was nowhere in sight. I'd given it to him last month, hoping he'd hang it up. Guess it didn't make the cut. My chest tightened, but I shoved it down. Focus on the Pentagon, I told myself. That's what matters. Back at the table, dessert was served. Mom's apple pie, my favorite. I took a bite, but it tasted like cardboard. Vance was now regaling everyone with a story about his latest defense contract, his hands waving like he was conducting an orchestra. Dad ate it up, nodding proudly. I checked my phone under the table, a text from Marla, my teammate. "You ready for tomorrow, boss? You're gonna kill it." I smiled, my first real one all night. Marla, Wayne, Floyd, they believed in me. They'd be there tomorrow cheering me on. As coffee was poured, I steeled myself. I had to get through this dinner, keep my cool, and not let Dad's shade dim what was coming. The Pentagon wasn't just a ceremony, it was my chance to prove I didn't need his approval. But as I watched him laugh with Vance, I couldn't shake the hope, small and stubborn, that maybe, just maybe, he'd show up tomorrow and see me for who I really was. I gripped my fork, the wildfire in me flickering but not out. The dinner table felt like a battlefield, and I was losing ground fast. Dad had just launched into another story about Vance's glory days in Fallujah, his voice booming over the clink of coffee cups. I sat there, my slice of apple pie untouched, as the room hung on his every word. Then Aunt Glenda, her Merlot glass empty again, turned to me with a syrupy smile. "Janet dear, when are you going to do something real? Like Vance?" The table went quiet, all eyes on me. My throat tightened, but I forced a tight smile. "Saving the Navy from cyber attacks isn't real enough, Glenda," I said, my voice sharper than I meant. She blinked, flustered, and Cousin Lyle, a balding accountant with a permanent squint, jumped in. "Come on, Janet, you know what she means. Vance was in the thick of it. Bullets, bombs, you're just typing." He chuckled, like it was a joke. Vance leaned forward, his smirk wider now. "Yeah, sis, maybe if you saw actual combat, Dad would put your medal up." The room laughed, a nervous, jagged sound. My fingers curled into fists under the table, nails digging into my palms. Dad didn't laugh. He just leaned back, sipping his whiskey, his eyes cold. "She's got a point, Janet," he said, voice low. "Your work's important, sure, but it's not boots on the ground. Never will be." My heart sank, the old ache flaring. I wanted to scream about the sleepless nights, the lives I'd saved, the Legion of Merit burning a hole in my pocket. Instead, I met his gaze, steady. "Lives are lives, Dad. I save them my way." He snorted, waving a hand. "Your way's not Carter material." The words hit like a slap. Mom gasped softly, her napkin twisted to shreds in her lap. Aunt Glenda tried to change the subject, babbling about her roses, but the damage was done. Vance piled on, casual as ever. "Hey Janet, maybe stick to tech support. Leave the hero stuff to me." Another laugh rippled through the table, and I felt my face burn. I glanced at Mom, hoping for backup, but she just stared at her plate, her lips pressed thin. My cousin Darla, usually chatty, picked at her pie, avoiding my eyes. The room felt smaller, the air thicker. Every jab, every smirk was a reminder. To them, I'd never be enough. I wanted to storm out, but tomorrow's Pentagon ceremony kept me glued to my seat. I couldn't let them see me break. Not now, not when I was so close to something bigger. I took a slow breath, unclenching my fists. "You'll see," I said, my voice low, aimed at Dad. He raised an eyebrow but didn't reply. Vance chuckled, muttering something about desk jockeys. I let it slide, my focus shifting inward. The wildfire in me was roaring now, fueled by their contempt. They could laugh all they wanted. Tomorrow at the Pentagon I'd stand in the Hall of Heroes, and no one, not Dad, not Vance, not Glenda's stupid Merlot grin, could take that from me. I just had to survive this gauntlet first. The dinner table was a war zone now, the laughter from Vance's jabs still lingering like shrapnel. I sat rigid, my hands flat on my thighs, trying to keep my cool as Dad's words, not Carter material, burned in my chest. The clatter of dessert plates and Aunt Glenda's tipsy chatter faded as he stood, his chair scraping the hardwood. "Got something to show you all," he said, his voice commanding like he was back on the parade ground. He gestured toward the hallway where his precious glass case of Vance's medals gleamed. Everyone followed, a obedient herd, and I trailed behind, dread pooling in my gut. In the hallway, Dad stopped at the case, his broad shoulders blocking the light. Vance stood beside him, chest puffed out, while Mom hovered nervously, her fingers clutching her cardigan. The rest, Glenda, Lyle, Darla, crowded around, murmuring excitedly. Dad reached into his pocket and pulled out my Legion of Merit, the ribbon catching the chandelier's glow. My breath hitched. Had he finally— "This," he said, holding it up, "is Janet's little award." His tone was ice, a knife. He opened the case and placed it on a shelf, right below Vance's bronze star, like it was an afterthought. "Vance's honors," he continued, pointing to the rows of gleaming medals, "define this family's legacy. Janet's, well, it's nice, but it doesn't belong here." He shut the case with a click, final, like a gavel. The room went silent, everyone staring at me. Vance smirked, arms crossed. Glenda gasped, then covered her mouth. Lyle shifted uncomfortably. Mom's eyes darted to me, wide with guilt, but she said nothing. My throat burned, my vision blurring. I'd given him that medal hoping for pride, and he'd turned it into a prop for his sermon. "Dad," I started, my voice shaking but clear, "that medal's for saving thousands of sailors." He turned, his gray eyes hard. "It's not the same, Janet. You're not a warrior. You're support." The word landed like a punch. Then he added, quieter, "You're no daughter of mine if you can't measure up. Disowned." Right there. In front of everyone. My heart cracked, but I didn't flinch. I wouldn't give him the satisfaction. Vance chuckled, low and cruel. "Told you, sis, stick to keyboards." Glenda tittered nervously, and Lyle muttered something about tough love. Mom stepped forward, her voice barely a whisper. "Randall, please." But Dad waved her off, turning back to the case, admiring Vance's medals like I wasn't even there. The rejection was complete, public, final. I felt naked, exposed, but something else stirred, a cold, sharp resolve. I straightened, my hand steady now. "You're wrong," I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. Dad froze but didn't turn. "You'll see how wrong." I walked back to the dining room, my steps measured, ignoring their stares. My phone buzzed in my pocket, probably Marla or Wayne, checking in about tomorrow. The Pentagon was waiting, and it wasn't just a ceremony, it was my vindication. Dad could keep his damn case. I was done begging for his approval. The wildfire in me wasn't just burning, it was ready to consume everything. The sting of Dad's rejection still burned as I sat back at the dining room table, the empty pie plates and half-drunk coffee cups a stark contrast to the chaos in my head. Everyone trickled back from the hallway, their whispers loud enough to grate. Glenda's, "She'll get over it," Lyle's, "Randall's just being Randall." Vance slid into his seat, smirking like he'd won the lottery. Dad didn't return. I heard him in the study, probably pouring another whiskey. Mom hovered near me, her hand brushing my shoulder, but I shrugged her off, too raw to talk. My phone buzzed again, insistent, and I glanced at the screen. Captain Floyd Dempsey. My heart skipped. This wasn't a check-in. I stepped onto the porch, the cool Virginia night air hitting my face as I answered. "Commander Carter," Floyd said, his voice clipped but warm. "You sitting down?" I leaned against the railing, the wood creaking under my grip. "What's up, sir?" He chuckled, a rare sound. "Pentagon just moved up your ceremony. Tomorrow 900, Hall of Heroes, you're getting the Distinguished Service Medal." I froze, my breath catching. "The what?" He kept going, calm but proud. "For your work on that Pacific Fleet hack. They're calling you a cornerstone of modern national security. Secretary of Defense will be there." My knees wobbled. The Distinguished Service Medal, higher than the Legion of Merit, a career-defining honor. I'd known tomorrow was big, but this was seismic. Thank you, sir, I stammered, my voice barely steady. Floyd's tone softened. You earned this, Janet. Your team's proud. I'm proud. I nodded, even though he couldn't see, my eyes stinging. I mumbled a goodbye and hung up, staring at the stars, the weight of it sinking in. Not just a medal, a public declaration that my work mattered. Back inside, the dining room felt smaller, their chatter insignificant. Vance was mid-story, something about his latest contract, but his voice faded as I stood in the doorway, phone still in hand. Mom noticed first, her brow furrowing. Janet, you okay? She asked, loud enough to pause the table. I looked at Dad's empty chair, then at Vance's smug grin, and something snapped into place. I didn't need to shout or beg, I just smiled, slow and sure. Better than okay, Mom? Vance raised an eyebrow. What's that supposed to mean? I didn't answer, slipping my phone into my pocket. Let them wonder. Glenda tried to fill the silence, babbling about dessert leftovers, but I was already elsewhere, picturing the Pentagon, the medal, the faces of my team, Marla and Wayne who'd fought beside me. Dad's words in the hallway, "No daughter of mine," felt hollow now. The Pentagon didn't think I was support. They thought I was a game changer. I grabbed my coat from the hall, ignoring Lyle's confused, "Leaving already?" I didn't owe them an explanation. As I stepped toward the door, Mom followed, her voice low. Janet, please. He didn't mean it. I met her eyes, softer now. Doesn't matter, Mom, I've got this. The wildfire in me wasn't raging anymore, it was focused, a laser. Tomorrow I'd walk into that ceremony and claim what was mine, no matter who showed up or didn't. The night air hit me like a slap as I stepped out of the house, my coat slung over my arm, the echo of Mom's pleading voice fading behind me. I didn't look back, my steps crunching on the gravel driveway as I headed for my car. Inside, the dining room was probably buzzing. Vance spinning some new story, Glenda refilling her Merlot, Lyle pretending nothing happened. But Dad's words, that case, my Legion of Merit tucked under Vance's shadow, they burned. And now, with Floyd's call still ringing in my ears, I felt something new. Power. The Distinguished Service Medal wasn't just an honor, it was a megaphone, and I was done staying quiet. I slid into my car, the leather cold against my back, and gripped the wheel. My phone buzzed. Marla, texting, heard the news. DSM, you're a legend. I smiled, but my mind was on the house. I could have left, driven to my hotel, prepped for the Pentagon, but the wildfire in me demanded one last move. I got out, marched back to the porch, and pushed the door open. The dining room went quiet, forks pausing midair. Vance looked up, his smirk faltering. Mom's eyes widened. Even Glenda shut up. Janet, Mom said, half standing. I ignored her, my gaze locked on the hallway. I walked straight to Dad's precious case, the glass gleaming under the chandelier. He was there, leaning against the study door, whiskey in hand, his face unreadable. I opened the case, grabbed my Legion of Merit, and held it up. This, I said, my voice steady, saved lives, thousands. You don't get to decide what it's worth. Dad's jaw tightened, but he didn't speak. Vance appeared behind him, arms crossed. What's this, sis? A tantrum? I turned to him, calm, deliberate. No, Vance. It's clarity. You and Dad can keep your little shrine. I don't need it. I faced the room. Glenda, Lyle, Darla, all frozen. You all think I'm less because I don't carry a rifle. But tomorrow, the Pentagon's giving me the Distinguished Service Medal. They're calling me a cornerstone of national security. Not support, not little, a cornerstone. The silence was deafening. Glenda's glass clinked as she set it down. Lyle's mouth opened, then shut. Mom's hand flew to her chest, her eyes glistening. Vance scoffed, but it was weak, his bravado cracking. Dad stepped forward, his voice low. You're exaggerating, Janet, always so dramatic. I met his stare, unflinching. Am I? Call Floyd Dempsey, ask the Secretary of Defense, or don't. I don't care anymore. I pocketed my medal and walked out, their stunned faces blurring behind me. Dad called after me. Janet, wait, but I kept going. The door slammed shut, and I was free. In the car, my hands shook, but not from anger, relief. I'd exposed their hypocrisy not with screams, but with truth. The Pentagon was waiting, and I didn't need Dad's case or his approval to know my worth. The wildfire wasn't consuming me now. It was lighting my way. The Virginia night blurred past as I drove to my hotel, the weight of Dad's case and Vance's smirk fading with every mile. My Legion of Merit sat on the passenger seat, its ribbon catching the streetlights. I felt lighter, like I'd shed a skin I'd worn too long. By the time I reached the hotel bar, Marla and Wayne were already there, waving me over to a corner booth. The place was cozy, all warm wood and low chatter, a far cry from the Carter estate's suffocating tension. Marla, her braids pulled back, slid a beer my way. "To the DSM, boss," she said, grinning. Wayne, his flannel sleeves rolled up, raised his glass. "To Janet freaking Carter." I laughed, the sound surprising me. "You guys heard already?" Marla rolled her eyes. "Floyd's been bragging to everyone, Pentagon's buzzing." We clinked glasses, and for the first time all night I breathed easy. These were my people, my chosen family, not bound by blood but by trust, by nights in that Norfolk bunker, by believing in me when I doubted myself. Marla leaned in, her voice softer. "How'd the family dinner go?" I sighed, tracing the rim of my bottle. "About as well as you'd expect. Dad put my medal in Vance's case, called it nice, disowned me basically." Wayne's jaw dropped. "Disowned? What the hell?" Marla's eyes narrowed, fierce. "Screw that old man, he's got no clue what you've done." I nodded, their outrage warming me. "Yeah, well, I told them about the DSM, shut them up real quick." Wayne hooted, slapping the table. "That's my girl! Bet Vance's face was priceless." I grinned, picturing it. His smirk gone, Dad's silence. But the victory felt hollow without this. Marla's fist bump, Wayne's loud laugh, the way they saw me. We ordered wings, the spicy tang grounding me. Marla shared a story about her kid's science fair, Wayne ranted about his broken laptop, and I just listened, soaking it in. This was what family should be. No medals on display, no scorekeeping, just real. I thought back to the dining room, Glenda's pity, Lyle's jabs, Mom's helpless glances. They'd never get it. But here, with Marla teasing Wayne about his hot sauce obsession, I felt whole. They didn't care about my last name or my brother's bronze star. They cared about me, Janet, the one who led them through hell and back. As the bar emptied, Marla squeezed my hand. "Tomorrow's your day, Jay, we've got your back." Wayne nodded, serious for once. "Always." My throat tightened, but I smiled. "Thanks, guys. Means everything." Walking to my room later, I passed a mirror in the lobby. I looked different. Not the girl begging for Dad's nod, but a woman ready to stand in the Hall of Heroes. The contrast was stark. The toxic dinner, all sharp edges and cold pride, versus this warm, messy booth with my true allies. I didn't need Dad's case. I had something better, a team that chose me, and tomorrow, a stage to prove it. The hotel room was quiet, the hum of the AC the only sound as I sat on the bed, my dress blues laid out like armor for tomorrow's Pentagon ceremony. My phone glowed with a missed call from Mom, but I let it sit. Last night's showdown at Dad's house, my Legion of Merit in my hand, their stunned faces, kept replaying. I'd walked out head high, but the high was fading, replaced by a raw ache. Dad's "no daughter of mine" cut deeper than I'd admitted, and Mom's silence hurt almost as much. I needed to draw a line, not just for them but for me. I grabbed a notepad from the desk, my pen scratching out thoughts. Boundaries. That's what this was about. I'd spent years bending over backward for Dad's approval, letting his shade chip away at me. No more. I wrote, no more chasing, no more explaining. They get me on my terms or not at all. My hands shook, but it felt right. I wasn't cutting them off, not yet, but I was done playing their game. If Dad wanted to talk, he'd have to come to me, and it'd be about respect, not medals. My phone buzzed again. Marla checking in. "You good for tomorrow? We're bringing the noise." I smiled, texting back. "Born ready, thanks for having me." Her reply was instant. "Always, boss." That was the difference. Marla, Wayne, Floyd, they didn't demand I prove my worth. They saw it in the bunker, in the code, in the lives we saved. Dad saw only what fit his mold, and I'd nearly broken myself trying to fit. I stood, pacing the room, my reflection catching in the mirror. The woman staring back looked steady, not the girl who'd flinched at Dad's snorts. I thought about the Distinguished Service Medal, the Pentagon stage, the Secretary of Defense shaking my hand. It wasn't just an honor, it was proof I didn't need Dad's case or his nod. But he'd try to worm back in, I knew it. A half-assed apology maybe, or some backhanded, "I always knew you had it in you." I had to be ready. I sat again, adding to my list. No fake apologies, no rewriting history. If Dad wanted forgiveness, he'd have to own what he'd done. Not just last night, but years of dismissing me. Mom too, she'd have to stop hiding behind, "He's old school." Vance? He could keep his smirks. I didn't owe him a damn thing. My new rules weren't about revenge, they were about survival. I'd built a life, Naval commander, cybersecurity lead, team leader, that was my fortress. And I wasn't letting them storm it. By the time I set the pen down, my shoulders felt lighter. Tomorrow I'd walk into the Hall of Heroes, not as Colonel Carter's daughter, but as Janet Carter, cornerstone of national security. Dad's voice, Vance's jabs, they'd stay outside. I tucked the notepad away, my resolve solid. The wildfire in me wasn't raging now. It was a steady flame, guarding my new boundaries, ready for whatever came next. Morning light streamed through the hotel window as I adjusted my dress blues, the Distinguished Service Medal ceremony just hours away. The weight of last night's resolve, my new boundaries, that notepad list, felt like a shield. I wasn't just Janet Carter, the colonel's daughter anymore. I was a naval commander, a cybersecurity architect, and today, the Pentagon would cement that. But as I pinned my name tag, my mind shifted to the bigger picture. What I'd do with this moment. It wasn't enough to win. I wanted to redefine what Carter meant, not for Dad or Vance, but for me and anyone who'd ever felt invisible. I grabbed my phone, scrolling through emails from Captain Floyd Dempsey. One caught my eye, a proposal I drafted months ago, buried in the chaos of the Pacific Fleet hack. It was a plan for a national cybersecurity training program aimed at young officers and civilians to build the next generation of digital defenders. I'd pitched it as a legacy project, something to outlast me. Floyd's note was short. Pentagon loves this, let's talk post-ceremony. My pulse quickened. This was it, my chance to make an impact beyond medals. I pictured the program, boot camps in Norfolk, San Diego, maybe even DC, with kids like I was, nerdy, overlooked but hungry to prove themselves. I'd teach them to code, to think like hackers, to save lives without firing a shot. The Carter name would mean innovation, resilience, not just Dad's dusty army tales or Vance's war story. I sat on the bed, typing notes, partner with tech firms, mentor women in STEM, fund scholarships. My hands moved fast, ideas flowing. This wasn't about erasing Dad's legacy, it was about building mine. A knock at the door snapped me out of it. Marla and Wayne, both in crisp uniforms, grinned from the hallway. Ready to make history, boss? Marla asked, her eyes bright. Wayne held up his phone, already recording. Gotta document the legend. I laughed, grabbing my cap. Let's do this. In the car, they teased me about my speech, but my mind was on the program. I'd mention it today. Plant the seed in front of the Secretary of Defense. If I could get their ear, this could be real. As we pulled up to the Pentagon, the Hall of Heroes looming, I felt a surge of purpose. Dad's case, Vance's smirks, they were noise now, not signal. I was reclaiming the Carter name not by outshining them, but by outbuilding them. My program would save lives, shape futures, and prove that heroes don't need rifles, they need grit, brains, and a cause. I stepped out, Marla and Wayne flanking me, their pride louder than any medal. The wildfire in me burned steady, not for revenge but for creation. Today I'd take my place, and the Carter legacy would never look the same. The Pentagon's Hall of Heroes was electric, the air thick with anticipation as I stood at the podium, the Distinguished Service Medal now pinned to my chest. The Secretary of Defense had just shaken my hand, calling me a visionary in national security, and the room, packed with admirals, senators, my team, erupted in applause. Marla and Wayne beamed from the front row, Wayne's phone still recording. I glanced at the crowd, half expecting Dad or Mom, but their absence didn't sting like I thought it would. This moment was mine, and I was enough. As the clapping faded, I leaned into the mic, my voice steady. This medal isn't just for me. It's for every unsung hero who fights in the shadows, coding, analyzing, protecting. I paused, my cybersecurity training program flashing in my mind. Today I'm announcing a new initiative to train the next generation of defenders, to ensure our nation's safety in a digital age. The room stirred, nods rippling through the crowd. Floyd gave me a thumbs up, I'd done it, planted the seed. Afterward, in the reception hall, I sipped coffee, fielding congratulations. Marla hugged me, whispering, "You killed it, boss." Wayne, munching on a pastry, added, "Carter legacy redefined." I laughed, but inside, I was reflecting. Hours ago, I'd been the girl craving Dad's nod, measuring myself against Vance's medals. Now, standing here, surrounded by people who saw my worth, I realized I'd been chasing the wrong thing. My value wasn't in Dad's case or even this medal, it was in my work, my team, my vision. I'd found peace not in proving him wrong but in proving myself right. Then a familiar voice. "Janet?" I turned. Mom, alone in a simple dress, her eyes red. Your father, he's sorry, he saw the ceremony on TV. I waited, expecting the old ache, but it didn't come. He wants to talk, she added, hesitant. I nodded, calm. Maybe someday, Mom, on my terms. She smiled, small but real, and hugged me. I hugged back, not for Dad but for her. His apology, imperfect as it was, didn't define me anymore. I did. Walking out with Marla and Wayne, the Pentagon glowing against the dusk, I felt whole. The wildfire in me wasn't ablaze now, it was a quiet, steady light. I'd built my own legacy, and that was enough. Have you ever felt like you had to prove your worth to someone who couldn't see it? I'm Janet Carter, and I've been there, chasing approval until I realized my value comes from within. My journey, from my father's dismissal to standing tall at the Pentagon, was about finding that truth. I'd love to hear your stories. Drop them in the comments below. If my journey resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear that it's okay to define success on their own terms. You don't need anyone's case to shine. Your light is enough. Keep building, keep fighting, and know you're never alone.